Oh, I'm telling you, it's good to be back with my friends in Mountain Home. I've just been gone 36 years, but I get up here, not as often as I used to because it don't make the drive as good as I used to, but normally about every 3 or 4 weeks, up until about the last year. But it's really good to be with you, and I am a member of your historical society.
Yes, you are.
And I plan to be from now on. Now, I shook hands with a few of you, and that's not because I wouldn't like to shake hands with all of you. If I'd been running for office, you better believe I'd have made every one of them. We used to go out with my family on Friday night, Larry, always Jack and Dennis can testify to that. And I'd never sit down when we went in a restaurant until I shook hands with everybody, because I knew everybody, you know, and most everybody knew me. And besides that, politicians should never, they ought to learn to run in season and out of season. If you're going to make it a kind of a full-time thing and you get there and you kind of like it, you better try to perpetuate yourself, because that's the way it works. Growing up here, out in the Big Pond community, and not very many of you, if any other than kinfolks, don't know where that's at, but if you know where the soccer field is, that's my dad's old farm. And to the left of there, about a quarter of a mile down, there's a little schoolhouse, or used to be, and that's the Big Pond Schoolhouse. About schools, I want to say just a word. I have an educational survey here of a census, school enumeration, they call it back then, Jackie, of the county-wide. And there were 67 school districts in Baxter County the year I was born, 1930. There's a little map in here. I'm going to donate to this, Jen, by the way.
Thank you.
You know, kids, there'd have to be another schoolhouse every how far they could walk, and then there'd have to be another schoolhouse. And so there were 67 in Baxter County. I got to look at that map. I hadn't had this out for a long time. And there's only 2 names of school districts that I didn't recognize. And one of them was Wesley. And you know where Wesley Chapel's at? Out west of town. That, by the way, was named after, who was it, John Wesley, that started the Methodist Church? And that was the Wesley school. The other one was Ozark, and I thought, where in the world would Ozark be? Well, Ozark County, Missouri. Must be up close to the border somewhere. So back up kind of where Jack Edmonds folks come from, up there in Promised Land or Oakland or somewhere.
Ozark School is actually out Promised Land Road out there, and it still
So
stands.
that's the only 2 that I
As a
didn't know. Political career here. I made a few notes, and I'll try to stick with them. I don't know what time we had allotted. Jerk my shirt tail or something when I get
You
talk to
can talk an hour.
There was a county school supervisor for years and years named B. Bradley Forster. Forster Street, maybe some of you know where Forster Street is. And he came down to Big Pond School one time, and I think I was in the 5th grade. And he told us about the county officials, the county government people who run the county government, and for the people, of course. And when he dramatized about the county judge's job, I don't know, it kind of rang a bell. I kind of thought, boy, that sounds good, you know. Here I am, a little tyke. And I never forgot it, but I never really said it as a big objective either. But I was 29 the first time I ran for office, and somewhere along about there, I said to my wife, I said, you know, time's rocking along, and here we are, we've got 2 or 3 kids already, and I'd like to get into something where I'd have a little retirement. The Corps of Engineers, and if you wasn't a veteran, which 2 of my brothers were, and I just didn't have to be old enough to go, when 15 years old when World War II ended, and Korean War come along. I had a draft card, but I had a boy and a wife to support, and didn't quite catch up with me. But anyway, post office, highly political job back then. Meaning, you had to have your politics really tuned up, Terry, or you didn't get a selection. There wasn't many jobs anyway, post office. And then, let's see, railroad. Railroad down at Cotter. Boy, you really had to know somebody to get on the railroad. Mopac, Missouri Pacific. And so I wasn't successful in any of that.
Jimmy,
but
both my grandfather and my father worked there.
You bet, you bet. By the way, and going through some, that's another subject. I've got had 3 boxes, big boxes, plastic boxes of stuff that I left, were my personal stuff when I left the judge's office in first day of 81. Last day of 31st was my last day. I loaded out on the next Monday morning. And I think I may have looked in those boxes about maybe 2, maybe 3 times for something, but other than that, they just sat there. And finally, I decided recently, I'm not going to live forever. I better do something with that because nobody's going to want to fool with it. They'll just go in the trash. And some stuff like this that I didn't want to go in the trash and some other stuff. So I brought some stuff with me, and tomorrow I'll unload it up there. But in that box of stuff was lots of clippings. I had friends who would say, remember the Baxter Bulletin article, Looking Backward? And there's lots of stuff in there. By the way, Terry, I saved a folder as I was going through it, that was stuff to give to you. A lot of stuff about the Curley family, and there's some whole newspapers, and there's lots of clippings. But anyway, back to the elections. Judge Thomas made a fine judge, and he was judge 8 years, but I just had a hanker to have his job. So,
and it paid so well.
So I jumped in. But anyway, I had seen him on several occasions with races. There'd be 2 people, he and an opponent, and he'd managed to get a third party in there, and that kind of breaks up the Democrat primary vote, and he'd inevitably win. So I didn't want that to happen to me, so the election ticket opened in 1960, and get my years straight here, yeah, 1960, and Isaac signed up. Warren Goforth, who was assessor, signed up, and we just had gone through a county-wide reevaluation, and that is tremendously difficult. It was back then on county officials, especially assessors. So I knew he was weak politically. So anyway, I was afraid to get in, afraid I'd make the 3-way race and not get anywhere. So Warren just like 60 some odd votes beating Judge Thomas. So I knew that he too was weak, politically. So I had some people come to me and want me to run on the independent ticket. And he had to circulate a petition. Tom Tennant drew up my paperwork. Didn't cost me a dime.
God bless you.
Yeah. Controversial he was. But anyway, it was all correct, but I had to circulate that around over the county, and of course, I circulated the petition, but whoever else circulated one, they had to verify that they had seen every signature put on there, and that made it a little bit difficult. But I had a lot of good volunteers, and we had to file it 45 days before the general election, and they had to be certified and so forth. So 10 terms at the time that Baxter County. The 2 decades I served was the fastest growing county in the state. And that means that you, the people, the taxpayers, and the public officials have growing pains. Because population was increasing fast, but the taxes we pay a year in reverse, and if you're not through with that house, when that second year is over, you get grace period. And so it can be 3 years, could be then. Before we get tax money in. Before that happened, you were wanting a road paved, at least a road and a paved. And of course, they were just bulldozing subdivisions in with dozers and just about leaving them like that. But I served 10 terms, had 11 races. Now, how does that equate? I got by one time without anybody. The man that owned this farm here was circling the square in a black Chevy pickup, and the ticket closed. And I got by without Les Skeet was threatening me to run, which he had a right to do. And he was circling the square, and the Jiggy Bodenhammer said, "Time's over, time's up." But anyway, sometimes you'd have a primary race. I don't remember how many opponents that was, but sometimes you'd have a primary race, nearly always, and then you'd have a general. And like I said, got by one time. Counties in Arkansas are all considered, called by the name of counties, but in 2 states in America out of the 50, you know, Alaska, it's a borough.
James.
And in Louisiana, it's a parish. Other than that, all the rest of them are known by the counties. And of course, you remember that recent article with, I believe it's State Farm Insurance, elections? Yes, I've seen a few. You know, when the man advertises the insurance department. So it was fun, but it was challenging. And like I said earlier, you have to run all the time. It's just, you have to perpetuate yourself if you like it. And I remember going across the street, Kenneth Jackson, as assessor, was elected the same time I was. We went across the street to Baker's drugstore one morning to get a cup of coffee. And,
That's gone too.
huh?
That's gone too.
Yeah. and Kenneth said, "Did you sign up on that retirement?" And I said, "Yeah, I did," because we had to contribute 6% back then as a contributor, and I think it's that way now or about. He said, I didn't do that. I don't know if I'm going to like this job or not, so I didn't do it. But I kind of decided early on that I liked that job and signed up. And bless his heart, when he retired, he liked little he had to go back to work for the state, or when he got beat, rather. But anyway, time gets away and passes real fast whenever you're having fun. When I retired, about the last 2 months, I knew where I was going. I'd been invited to join the Association of Arkansas Counties in Little Rock. What's that? You know, I mean, I'm sure you're thinking that. You know about the Municipal League, I suppose, and they represent 501 cities. It's the compatriot of that. It represents 75 counties, and there probably won't ever be another additional county. Haven't been, by the way, but one new county in America that I know of in the last many years, and that is in Colorado, north of Denver, Broomfield, and it's called now Broomfield County. It was right in the very corner of 4 counties, and I had a brother-in-law who lived there, and it was a real fast-growing area. And so they took a vote in all 4 of those counties and formed a new county there. But that's been a few years ago. When I went to work for the Association of Counties, I went there on a federal grant. They applied for a federal grant and received it in order to make a position, a new position. And they needed new position because they were growing and there wasn't very many people. I believe there was 5 there when I went to work there, 5 people. So I was a deputy director for quite some time, and then out of the 20 years I was there, whenever the executive director retired in '88, I was the executive director for the last 12 years. Excuse me, and I retired there at December 31st in 2000. And gosh, 15 years has went by. Now, the rest of the story is I've got 3 boxes of this stuff from there that I've got to go through. So when I like 1 box on these 3 for the county judge's office, and then when I get through that, I've got to start on the 3 boxes from the Association of Arkansas Counties. By the way, somebody asked me anymore, I think, Terry, that I knew county government probably as well as anybody in the state. This association, by the way, formed in 1968 by legislative act as an educational tool, a lobbying tool for the counties, and other necessary programs for counties. And when I went to work there, of course, I had been president of the Judge Association, and I had been on the board of that association. But I said to my boss, Courtney Langston, I said, "Courtney, I don't think I'll ever figure out who all these people are, because at that time we represented 1,369 folks." It wasn't the number of folks, believe me, at all. It's the turnover. About the time you knew who the assessor was in Calhoun County, that turned over, or whatever county he was talking about. So it was a very exciting period of time. And the Municipal League has, like I said, 501 cities. The county now, that association has about 25 employees and several self-funded programs like the Workers' Comp self-funded assurance association and a liability program and so forth. But anyway, it was quite a challenging time. Now somebody asked me something about some law pertaining to county government, and it happens pretty often. I said, I don't know. I can't answer your question because The legislature now meets, and did meet every other year, but now meets every year, and sometimes special sessions. And every time they meet, there's new laws created. And I don't attempt to answer a question for anybody anymore because I haven't been involved in it at all since I retired. You know, county officials, and many of you realize that, and believe you me, not many people that run for county offices realize this. There is a law on the books for every responsibility you have to lead, guide, and direct you and see that you do that. And so, you know, I wasn't aware of that. Some of the folks come right off the street, I call it, like I did. There are some that come up in the ranks, and of course they pretty well know a little more about what they're doing. But if you just want to be a county official and you come in off the street, I call it, you don't know what governs purchasing, selling, just everything. You know, there's a law, believe me, there for everything that's to be done. And it was fun, and it was good to help a lot of people over that period of time. Started out doing it on the phone, and then we got the fax, and we'd send them a fax after the phone call. Always made sure I followed up and more or less proved what I told them and where it was, so if they needed to quote it, they could. But anyway, we didn't have an attorney on staff, but now I think they have 3. But sometimes you just have to kind of, in life, you just kind of have to fly by your shirt tail, you know, till you can do better. Let's talk about Baxter County a little bit. I guess that's about enough about the county government and my involvement, except that I was privileged with this fast growth to help meet not all of, but many of the immediate needs of the citizenry of Baxter County. When we talk about citizenry, there was more people that lived in Baxter County in 1930, the year I was born, and even going back farther than that, than there was when I took office in 1960. You know, people left here for jobs. My folks left here in 1920 and went to Colorado and for jobs, you know, and I say they starved out. I mean, basically that's what it amounted to. A lot of people did. They went to Detroit to work, and here, there, and yonder. And so anyway, we came back here 14 years later, and I've always been grateful for my dad. I told him that he brought me back home. But some of the things that we were able to accomplish, I want to tell a little story about, and I've got one to tell on Terry directly too, but anyway, I'll save that for a little while. Baxter.
I'll get even.
Yeah, I know you do. What we call then Baxter General. I went home, by the way, before I went in office, I had a mobile service station for 4 years up there in the front of where Phil Jones' grocery store is at now, out next to the road there. And that's what I did. I worked at Chevrolet Garage 8 years. And started fixing flats and greasing cars and wound up in the parts department, the parts manager. And so that and a couple of things that I'd done before. I went to work there the 15th day of January in 1949. And but anyway, some of the things that I want to talk about is the growth. And I went home one afternoon, it was raining. I had sold the station, it was in November, along the last of November, and in 60. And there was a strange car sitting in my driveway under a big cedar tree, Jack. And it was raining. And I thought, who in the world would that be? It's just about dusk dark. And he and Dr. T.J. Herron, state health officer at the time, and 2 of his counterparts had been up here and spent the day and had to drive back into Little Rock that night. He had spent the day with Dr. Salzman and which nearly all of you probably remember, and different people. And he said, Mr. Baker, I understand you've been elected judge in Baxter County. And I said, yes, sir. And she said, we need to build a hospital up here. I said, what's wrong with Ben Salzman's hospital? I wasn't about to offend Ben Salzman, a good friend, you know. Sewed my hand up right there one time. Anyway, he said, I've been visiting with Ben today, and his little hospital is insufficient as far as the corridors being too narrow and didn't meet the wheelchair compliance thing and all the different things. Said Ben Solomon will close the hospital. He tells me the day that we would be able to open it. And I said, well, Ben told you that. That's what he meant. So he explained the Hill-Burton Act to me a little bit. That's a federal government program at that time, America-wide, of course, that made, I believe it was 60-40 match, 60% federal money and 40% local match. Well, it sounded good, and I knew that we needed the facility, and of course knew we were growing tremendously, and knew that the population factor was retirees, a lot of it, and that was coming in, you know. So I appointed and told him, I said, let me study about it. I said, I think the first thing I do would be to appoint an exploratory committee. So I appointed a 7-member exploratory committee, knowing that the hospital board, if in fact that transpired, was a 7-member board. So that progressed along and looked good, and we done some studies, and I wound up appointing that same committee, by the way, as 7 board members. I had the authority of the county judge to appoint the county hospital board. And so we got busy hiring an architect, and we got busy getting all of our paperwork taken care of with Little Rock, and we had some tremendously good help. And the first 39 beds opened, I believe it was the first day of November in 1963. And of course, you know, it just went from that on. There was a ambulatory nursing home, well, it really wasn't nursing, an ambulatory old folks home, excuse the phrase, out on Highway 126 that had been built in about 1950. It still stands today, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's apartments or something. But by that time, it was insufficient. By the time we got the hospital open and going, it was, by the way, that meant voting a bond issue for the 40% for Baxter County, which went over real good. And this boarding home, so to speak, for ambulatory folks was, but where they were riding me, the health department was to get it closed, you know, so we voted another bond issue to build a nursing home. We built it right onto the hospital with piped oxygen and everything so that we could convert it to hospital beds and then build a nursing home somewhere else. And that's what we did, and that's where when the nursing home first 30 beds, I believe it was, that was built, and then built it on up, what that wound up being 90 or 120 beds. So anyway, it grew too, of course, and as did the hospital. But the thing that has been proven in time, I think Baxter General, well, Baxter, whatever it's called now, is your major employer for Baxter County. I think that employed more people than anybody in the county. And that's what Dr. Herron told me that day. He said, this will wind up being the major employer for the county. And besides all the other good factors about it, of course.
Baxter Lab.
Baxter Lab came in '64. And
I think Baxter Lab would be the largest employer.
yeah, by the way, Wallow Dyer donated, I can't remember if it was 10 or 11 acres. I know when we built the nursing homes, we went back and bought some land from him for that. But he donated, and I have to tell this little story. Over on 5 North, right there where the hospital road turns in, there was barbed wire fence stretched across there, Wallow's cow pasture. And he told us, said, go over and pick out what you want, and we'll talk about it and have it surveyed and so forth. There was a little motel, if you remember, Terry, right there close to it. And we had 2 ladies on Miss Ortman and Miss Meacham on the hospital board. We had a heck of a time getting them through that barbed wire fence that day to walk over there to pick out the spot. But anyway, you know the rest of the story on the Baxter General Hospital. There was an awfully lot of people that wanted that to be sold before I left here, and I never did yield to it. And because the people who bought it, they built it and so forth, and I just didn't think that it was the way to go. But, thank you, Deborah, thank you. That's nearly beat me once or twice. The closest anybody ever got to me was a Baptist deacon got within 190 votes. And I never did think I was beat, but I knew that I never did even try to count the numbers at first, but I knew it was going to be about like that. But if he'd had, I still say if he'd known how to campaign, he might have beat me. But he'd go in a community and knock on the door or two and leave. You don't want to do that. You want to work every house in there, you know, like the way we done it then. But anyway, that probably gets it. One of the other bigger projects was the jail. When Jack Edmonds' daddy was killed in May '68, I think I got that right, I dedicated myself to getting that jail off the 3rd floor.
Amen.
I went back up there many a night, mopping water. It'd be fires, there'd be everything. If you can imagine something happening, this fellow right here can tell you, it'll happen in a jail, you know. And so I've been up there many a time, different things. In the wintertime, they knock all the glasses out on the north side. We had a coal-fired boiler at the courthouse, and we had to get somebody down there if we did anything, and fire that boiler for them when it got real cold, because they done punched them window glasses out so they could holler at people and talk to them. And there's even been escapes from that 3rd floor on the sheets that we put together and went down. That's another.
Emmett was killed up there.
Yeah, on the 3rd floor. But I dedicated myself at that time. By the way, I'm going to tell something that may incriminate me. No, I may have to hire Terry to get me out. Whenever, that Saturday, when Emmett was killed, I was out of town that Saturday.
I was too.
Yeah, and I got back into town about 4 o'clock. And somebody, the first person I seen, said, "Judge, they hunting you with a stick." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" I already knew what was going on because I had heard it on the radio. So I went to see Pauline. I said, "Pauline, what can I do?" And she said, "Well, the state police has set up a headquarters down on that street that runs Sam Powell's savings and loan through there to Meacham's wallpaper place. They blocked that street off. What is it, Church Street? I believe it is. And they blocked it off with their trailer and set up headquarters there by the time I got back. And Colonel Boone Bartlett, the state police district director at Clarksville, was the man in charge. And of course, they was state police everywhere. So they said, "He's hunting you. He wants to know who's county judge in this county, and he wants to talk to you." So I got my car and go down there. And he said, he introduced himself to me, and I introduced myself to him. And he said, "I got to have some whiskey."
You know where the planning was.
Yeah, I knew where it was. And I had to break the law, and I had to break the law to do it. But he said, "My men are going to want a drink when they get off of, not all of them, but a lot of them when they get off the shift. They's working 12-hour shifts." He said, "I don't want them up there at that Missouri line." He said, "That'll get me in trouble quicker than anything." He said, "I need a case of whiskey, and I need it now. And I want some good whiskey." So I knew where it was. Emmett had, there was a law at the time, and like I said, I won't attempt to interpret to you that's still what it is. But anytime the sheriff picked up the confiscated alcohol, then he had to turn it over to the county judge. And guess what? It was a dry county, and I had to have a sale and sell it in a dry county. You think I ever had a sale? No. That'd have been a good way to get beat for sure. But I had a stash. I knew where it was, and there was some good whiskey in there. So I go down, unlock, and get one of those whiskey, the box that has, 24 in it, and picked out some of the very best, and took it back up there to Boone Bartlett. And it was sitting out there in my car, and I went in, and he said, "Well, where's the whiskey?" I said, "It's out there in my car." He said, "Bring it in here." Here I go, county judge, right down the alley, you know. Illegal to have it, possess it. Anything over a gallon, I think it was. But anyway, we caught the man in 36 hours. I never slept. I never laid down during that period of time. And you can't imagine, that's dark, the square in Mountain Home. Everybody had a gun on that I seen, you know.
Jimmy, when I got back to
People
town,
were scared to death.
when I got back to town, state police everywhere.
Yep.
And they set up right on the square. And they said, well, I said, "What are you trying to do here?" They said, "We're trying to keep down the crowd." I said, "Looks to me like you're trying to gather water. Get these sons of bitches out of here."
Yeah.
They're just trying to gather a crowd up.
Yeah.
And everybody was there. The whole town was there.
Yep,
That's,
it was something else.
yeah, that's
But
all.
anyway, I was there whenever he was arrested, when the old boy that shot him, was arrested.
I
But,
helped arrest him.
yeah. yeah,
His mama's house.
you bet. I remember,
Later, my youngest
Terry was
son
there.
said, Daddy should have killed that man when he had the chance.
believe you me, it would have happened if the state police hadn't have stepped in. I
It
remember
would have happened if
that.
I
There was
could-
an argument ensued.
I had a little old carbine, looked like an army carbine,
Yeah,
and if I could have pulled the trigger, I would have killed him.
yeah.
I just couldn't pull the trigger.
I dedicated myself at that time for us to have a new jail. We had the property.
What'd the guy do? We don't know that.
Oh, you don't know that story.
Yeah.
This fella had drifted, his folks had a little restaurant there on 8th Street, behind the Napa Auto Parts store on that street. And this fella had got out of penitentiary, 35 years old, somewhere about. He had got out of the penitentiary on probation in Ohio for, I think, breaking and entering and, stealing. And they granted him to come to Arkansas where his folks was. He came down here and married a girl, and I think they may have already had some children by that time. But anyway, he...
Smuggled a gun into him. She's the
Huh?
one that smuggled the gun into him.
Yeah, she's the one who got the gun to him. Anyway, while he broke into Chevrolet garage broke the glass window in the body shop on a Saturday night, and Lloyd Fisk run the Chevrolet, and he heard it, and he called Emmett. Emmett came down there. They arrested him, put him in jail. Well,
Lloyd literally stepped on his neck till Emmett got there.
yeah,
If he'd known who he had, he wouldn't have done that.
yeah, I don't
It's in my
know.
book.
Don't know all of that story, but I know part of it. But anyway, we were pretty lax at that time as far as there was not as much crime as there is now, and no comparison. But one evening, I got ready to go home, and my office on the southwest side, and I go down. We had locked all the doors except the one on the south side where the sheriff's office was, there on the first floor. And I said to the jailer, I said, "What's in that brown sack there?" He said, "Oh, that's Pittman. Pittman's wife brought that up here for his supper." And I looked in it, and there was a great old big bun just about that big in there, and I didn't pick it up. I wish I had if it had been heavy. But there was a 25 Beretta smuggled into the jail, and I always wondered if it wasn't in that sack. And
No, I think she did. I think she smuggled it into the jail. We used to let people go into the
Oh, yeah.
jail, and I think she smuggled it in when she went to sing.
well, we were pretty lax, I know that, on watching folks as good as we probably was. But anyway, that's what transpired in a jailbreak, and the deputy was knocked out, and Emmett was shot pretty much right here, went down through with that little 25, and he grabbed Abe's 357, and
Yeah.
36 hours later. By the way, Colonel Scott had called that off before. He called the hunt off. He said, he's gone, he's caught a train, he's done something, he's gone. And so we caught him after that order.
Right next to his house.
Yeah, right next, crawling. Well,
I told Bob Dudley to put out the word that we called it off,
yeah,
and we did.
yeah,
And that's how we caught him.
yeah.
If he had thought we were still looking for him, he would never have gone home.
Well, we said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to build the jail? We got no money. But there was a federal law passed for cities and counties to get federal revenue sharing money. In 71, 72, and before 74, we had saved up pretty good little, no, it was before that, because we dedicated the jail in 73, or built it in 73. But anyway, we never spent any of that money. I was in charge of the budgeting, and it went to the quorum court, who met once a year back then. And we never spent any of that money except on capital improvement. Everything was spent for capital. A lot of cities and counties didn't do that. But we had it when it come time to try to do something. But to build this jail, which was about $350,000, big money for us then, but we had the property. There was a tire shop. The county had built a metal building, which is out at the shop now. It's a tire building. And there was an Arkansas Crime Commission source of money. There was the money that we already had for the federal revenue sharing. There was $46,000 left over from a bond issue for Marbach's,
That's
which was voted on the week before or the week after I went in office. But I had to get somebody to sue me, and we had to take it all the way to Supreme Court to get that $46,000.
offended. I'd offended.
Yeah, so, you know, it took some time, but we made it, and it was well worth it. That's another.
I had this court named it after you because I didn't know you had any money at all.
Yeah.
I thought you pulled the money right out of your butt.
Let me tell you how I got the Crime Commission money, and I'll make this fast if I can. Arkansas Crime Commission had, I believe it's 8 districts around over Arkansas with the Crime Commission districts, and I was on the board for the Northwest District. And the office, like I said, was in Little Rock. And I can't remember this man's name, but he was a black man that was in charge of the grants division. And so I was down there talking to him one day, begging, so to speak, philosophically. And I said, let's go out to Shorty Smalls for lunch. So we went out to Shorty Smalls, and I bought a good, county did, a good lunch for him. And I found out in the course of that he was kind of a country boy, really, and he liked sorghum molasses. Any of you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And it was fall of the year, and I knew where to get it. And he got a gallon of molasses out of that deal, and we got our grant.
Never knew how you did that.
That was part of it.
Got the court to name the building after.
Yeah, right. And the sign's still up.
Yeah.
Jack makes sure that the sign stays up. Roads. The thing that county judges got elected on back then, I don't participate in county politics anymore except just read the headline, but was roads. You know, back when my daddy was a boy, every man had to donate 3 days a week or his mules a day and a half to work on the county roads. And that was before the county road revenue, 3-meal tax it is now, we call it. And after that passed, and I don't remember what year that transpired. Somewhere around the turn of the century, they made available the road tax. Well, guess what happened in Baxter County? The day I was elected, the road tax failed, which was 3 meals then. And the cities get everything, they get half of everything that's assessed inside the city limits. So it doesn't really wind up, whole 3 meals didn't go into the county. So, in fact, I had a friend that was on the election commission over in Boone County, and he said, oh, that happened several times in our county. This was in November that happened, and I took office first of the year. And I said, well, what had happened? He said, the election commission just certified. They knew people didn't know what they voted on, and they didn't know. That failed, and we got a law passed where the county judge had to notify the local paper or papers in the county to be sure and put it on the ballot, because sometimes it's left off the ballot. In 1966, there were 6 counties that failed the road tax around over Arkansas. Well, at my association where we worked out, we dedicated ourselves to try to fix that. So we got a constitutional amendment referred by the legislature. And I was a statewide campaign manager that year, and we got it passed where it is automatic if levied by the quorum court. If they levy that tax, ever how much they want to levy of it, it's there and available for them and the cities. By the way, you know something? The municipal league fought us on that amendment. I never will do know why, because they got part of it. Well, I think I know why too. But anyway, that's another story. But in the legislative process, a lot of times, you know, in Arkansas, everybody in Arkansas lives in a county, but in Arkansas, not everybody lives in a city. But they have much greater numbers than we do. With 501 cities, you can imagine how many people they represent. So they beat our ears down a lot of different times. But let's talk a little bit about roads. Besides, I tried to make sure that tax never failed again, and it did, because I ran across some letters the other day where I was throwing away stuff, letters that I'd write about this time of year to the county election commission and give the county clerk a copy, asking them to be sure and to put the road tax on the ballot, you know. But when I went in office, there was 3 county roads that were blacktop. Cranfield Road was one of them, and it was built in 48 by public subscription. Ballard Point Road was built, I believe in 60 it was finished. It was not during my term, so I think it was the year before I went in. And it was a county road improvement district. Over across the lake on 62, we call it the old Custer Road. Turns up there at the top of the hill and goes back a little ways down to the lake. It used to go all the way to Fouts Boat Dock at Gamega, before the lake was built. That road was built it was built after I went in office, but it had been already voted when I went in to be a road improvement district. So we had quite a challenge on our hand. There was $18,000 in the county treasury, and everything is paid for the county. The former judge had called me and he said, I got a road grader that needs to be, we've got a road grader that needs to be overhauled, and what do you think? I said, well, you've got the money, and he said, yeah, but you know the situation. I said, yes, sir. And so, anyway, I left as the administrator about $240,000 in road and bridge when I left there, compared to the $18,000 when it went in. But that would have been, the money was appropriated for the following year, after I left. We did quite a lot of things to try to, and did build a lot of county roads. When I say build them, rebuild them and blacktop. We bought a new crusher in 64, but it was a creek rock crusher. We set it upon creeks and sized material for the, and convey it back out on the bank for the county roads. And then, getting ahead of myself a little here, there was quite a lot of federal surplus property available about that time. I was on the board at the Harrison District, or the Northwest District Economic Development Commission. And he said to us one day, the director did, he said, we're getting quite a lot of surplus material. He said, any of you boys interested in the rock crusher in your county? I said, yes, sir. Where is it? And we went down and screened that thing. We just looked at it and applied for it at Shreveport, at the Air Force Base there. And we managed to get it. It was almost brand new and had a lot of new parts and complete, 10 by 24 jaws with a roll behind it, So we set up a rock crusher, and we were one of the first counties in Arkansas that had a fresh rock system, which is still going today in this county. We built a lot of roads through. We bought a new asphalt distributor, and asphalt equipment in the 60s, and we built quite a few, paved quite a few chip and seal roads on our own. But there was a lot of road districts formed too, both mandatory and voluntary. Voluntary is the best way to go by far, but if you can't get it done that way, you might want to go the mandatory route, and that's controversial. But anyway, if the majority rules, you just go on with it and do it. But a little bit about the computerizing the county. We were the first county to have voter registration did by computer, and then we did the tax books and so forth. And we had a 32, IBM 32. That thing was as long as from here to the wall, on a cabinet. And it was the first one, and a new one. It was a new one. I know a county that got so scared when they got it, and it's not a county very far from here, they never did unbox theirs. Because it was quite a challenge, believe me, back in those days. But, there's funny things, there's good things, there's happy things about having served as a public official, and especially how good the people was to me to let me stay that long and complete some programs that I wanted to complete. You never get done, you still have goals. But the most sad thing about it is about the progress is that we made during that time. It is taken for granted by everybody that moves there afterwards that this just happened. They didn't see it before it happened. They didn't know the need. They didn't wade the mud, And so sometimes not appreciated by those that follow us, And so I feel like some things we done, and there was absolute fast pace. I used to say somebody'd buy a lot out here on the lake, out in a subdivision, and like I said, the trail was just kind of bulldozed in a lot of times. And he'd get salmon sprouts cut and the rocks picked up, And he'd say, you know, I don't know what I'd do if my house catch fire. Now, I ain't got no damn road, you know, and what if I need a policeman? Where would he have to come from? You know where he went? He actually started communicating with his neighbors. You know who he went to talk to? He pulled my chain. And so it was just very consistent all the time. That's just the way it works, and I'm sure it still works the same way. But, you know, when you raise your right hand every other year and pledge to support the Constitution of the state of Arkansas, the federal Constitution, and the laws of Arkansas and the federal laws, it's quite a challenge. But it's not insurmountable, even if you are the fastest growing county for 2 decades in the state of Arkansas. Of course, when things kind of slowed down here a little bit in the early 80s, Northwest Arkansas caught a fire, and you know the rest of the story, and that's where a lot of the action still is today. I want to talk a little bit about poll tax. Terry, you remember that? All of you do.
Your first vote you got free.
Your first vote you got free. Right. Now on, it costs you $1. And if you don't think that golded a lot of folks that moved in here, you bad fool. They'd say, I got to pay $1 to do what? You know, but you had to buy, and they filled out a little, the sheriff did, sheriff and collector of the county was responsible for it, and they fill out what kind of looked like a check, you know, then, a poll tax. And best I remember, I know you had to sign it, and I think the sheriff had to sign it, or at least initial it. But that went in somewhere around the turn of the century. And it was Amendment 26, and I've got the resources to look it up, what year it was passed, but I didn't have time. But the county clerk would cause to be a voter registration list in every precinct in the county. By the way, Baxter County has got 16 townships, and that don't always mean that that there's a precinct everywhere that there's a township. Where I live in Sherwood, Arkansas, there's only 2 townships. Different number of counties have different townships. There's a south Arkansas River, and there's a North Arkansas River. I think the north one's called Granite something. But this one has 16. But in this little book, when I get to work, I'm thinking somebody's name. And of course, you know, most of them are all dead. Now, this is a 63, 64. This is where I head out to, if I can't remember their name. But it's set up by precinct, and that's, we used to, I remember Emmett and I, when Emmett running 62, we didn't run together, I don't mean that, but we did compare notes once in a while. You check, if you had talked to somebody, if you had met them and talked to them, you put a little check mark by their name, you know. You didn't know if they were going to vote for you, but you knew that you had made contact with them. And that, by the way, that personal contact back then was just a real big thing. I mean, you know, at one time, I think I knew about everybody in the county. And especially about the time I went in office. And you didn't stop with asking them how their wife was. You said, how's your mama now? How's your folks? You know, you knew who they'd married. You knew if they said it's the Joneses, you either knew it was the Joneses over at Promised Land, or you knew it was down at Iuka or somewhere, or down somewhere in the other part of the county. About to shirt my shirt tail.
Well, my battery's running low, so.
So that's a little bit about the elections. Run across something here I wanted to share with you. I don't know how old this is, but it's been a long time since M.M. Cone was a big department store on Main Street in Little Rock. That's been closed for years and years, Jackie. But something I found odd about it is people are always making excuses for not going to the election. I got one more funny story to tell about this poll tax too. But for not voting today, excuses for not voting today, 23 of them here. And I didn't get back from probe gigging until 6:30 this morning. I can't go to the hairdresser, make decisions for the caterer, and vote. Cecilia's bringing the twins I have to babysit. I can't find my other contact lens. I promised the vet I would leave rum to have his teeth cleaned. After 18 holes, who can vote? But I promised Nan we would shop for cruise clothes. I can't see where my little vote would count. There's no time for anything but dishes and diapers. I don't know anything about the issues. It's too much trouble. I know who I like, but why vote for him when my husband voted for someone else? You ever hear that old story? That cliche? I'd rather watch as the world squirms and the young and the lustful. My boyfriend is due in from Tulsa. Today I can't go today. Why didn't someone tell me sooner? I start my vacation today. There are too many gadgets in the booth. Boy, that rings a bell. It's raining again and I'm not going out in that. I don't know anything about politics. Can I vote for Robert Redford? Marvin's car broke down. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I'll wait. If they don't get someone I like, I'll vote next time. It's up on us, isn't it? And I hope you go out and vote. One more little funny story about the poll tax. Now, I've heard this story, and I did not take a part of it, and don't tell the whiskey deal on me, please, because I might get warrant for me yet. But this booklet that looked like a checkbook, where these were, you had to tear them out. I understand it's been done by the some sheriff and collector, I don't know which one or where, other than 75 counties, that if they were, he or she was running, we have to say she nowadays, because back then there wasn't very many, Pauline was probably one of the first sheriffs in Baxter County. But he or she, back in those days, knew in order to get elected they had to have a poll tax for sure. And I've heard that sometimes they'd save a book back. And if somebody was right, we called it back then.